Nobody expected a routine regular season game to turn into one of the most talked about moments of the WNBA season, not because of a game-winning shot, not because of a fight, and not because of some shocking controversy between players. Instead, the entire basketball world found itself arguing over something much smaller, and somehow much bigger at the same time. A clap. That's right. A single moment of emotion from Caitlin Clark sparked a debate that spread across social media, sports shows, and WNBA fan communities almost instantly. And by the time the night was over, people weren't talking about Indiana's victory anymore. They were talking about officiating, fairness, and whether one of the league's biggest stars was being treated differently than everyone else. But what made this situation so explosive wasn't just the technical foul itself, it was what happened afterward. Because this time, Caitlin Clark wasn't interested in staying quiet. She had questions, and she wasn't afraid to ask them publicly. The controversy started during Indiana's matchup against the Phoenix Mercury. The Fever were battling through another physical game, and tensions were already running high. Every possession felt important. Every whistle was being scrutinized. And as emotions continued building, Clark found herself in the middle of yet another officiating dispute. At first, it seemed like one of those moments that would disappear after the final buzzer. Then the technical foul came. Immediately, confusion spread throughout the arena. Fans were trying to figure out what happened. Commentators were trying to understand what triggered the whistle. Even players appeared surprised by the decision. And when Clark approached the official to get an explanation, the answer she reportedly received made the entire situation even more difficult to understand. According to Clark, she was told the technical foul was issued because of clapping and what was described as instigating. That explanation instantly became the center of attention. Because basketball fans have seen emotional reactions for decades. Players celebrate. Players argue. Players react to calls. Players pump up crowds. It's part of sports. It's part of competition. And that's exactly why so many people immediately started questioning whether the punishment fit the action. The reaction online was almost immediate. Videos began spreading across social media. Fans started slowing down clips and replaying the sequence from every possible angle. Sports personalities weighed in. Former players shared opinions. And suddenly what looked like a routine technical foul became one of the biggest talking points in the entire league. But the real turning point came after the game, because Caitlin Clark didn't avoid the topic. She didn't give a generic answer. She didn't brush it aside and move on. Instead, she sat down in front of reporters and spoke openly about what happened, and her comments immediately made headlines. Clark explained that she had asked why the technical was called. She repeated the explanation she says she was given. Then she delivered a response that quickly spread across the basketball world. She essentially challenged the idea that showing emotion and competitiveness should be punished. For many fans, that comment captured exactly why the controversy had grown so large. This wasn't simply about one whistle, it was about where the line should be drawn. How much emotion should players be allowed to show? When does passion become unsportsmanlike? And are those standards being applied equally across the league? Those questions became impossible to ignore. Especially because this wasn't the first time Clark had found herself involved in conversations about officiating. Throughout her young WNBA career, several technical fouls and disputed calls have already generated major discussion. Some fans believe officials are simply enforcing the rules. Others believe Clark receives a different level of scrutiny because of her visibility. And regardless of which side people support, one thing is clear. Every controversial moment involving Caitlin Clark receives enormous attention. That's the reality of being the most discussed player in women's basketball. Every call is analyzed, every reaction is examined, every emotional moment becomes national conversation, and this situation was no different. As debate continued growing, attention started shifting toward another important figure in the story, Indiana Fever head coach Stephanie White. Many fans expected White to strongly defend her star player after the game. Instead, her response was measured and careful. She acknowledged the situation, but stopped short of launching any major criticism toward officials. That immediately created another layer of controversy. Some supporters felt White handled the situation professionally. Others believed she should have. But here's where the story takes an even more interesting turn. Because once the technical foul was rescinded, many people assumed the conversation would finally die down. It didn't. In fact, for a lot of fans, that decision only created more questions. If the technical shouldn't have been called in the first place, then why was it called? And if the league ultimately determined the punishment wasn't justified, what does that say about the consistency of officiating throughout the season? Those questions started popping up everywhere. Sports talk shows discussed it, podcasts debated it, social media feeds were flooded with opinions. And before long, people weren't just talking about one play anymore. They were talking about a pattern. Whether that pattern actually exists depends on who you ask. Some believe Clark receives no special treatment at all, and that every player deals with questionable calls throughout the course of a season. Others argue that Clark's status as the most recognizable face in the league puts her under a different microscope. Every reaction becomes a headline. Every disagreement becomes a controversy. Every whistle becomes a debate. And because of that, even routine moments suddenly feel bigger than they otherwise would. The reality probably falls somewhere in the middle. But regardless of where someone stands, there is one thing almost everyone agrees on. Caitlin Clark has become the center of attention in a way very few athletes ever experience. Think about how unusual that is. She's still early in her professional career, yet every game feels like a national event. Every road arena is packed. Every opponent knows cameras are following. Every controversial moment immediately goes viral. That's not normal. Most athletes spend years building that kind of spotlight. Clark walked into the league with it already attached to her name. And while that level of attention creates incredible opportunities, it also creates challenges, because every mistake becomes public, every frustration becomes public, every emotional reaction becomes public. Most players get to experience those moments quietly. Clark doesn't have that luxury, which brings us back to the night against Phoenix. Because something else happened during the aftermath that many people overlooked. While fans focused on the officials, Clark's response revealed something important about her growth as a player. A year ago, she might have reacted differently. She might have let others